Today we're going to get an introduction to endpoint detection and response, also known as EDR, and the role that it plays inside of SOC operations. And this is all a part of the SOC Level 1 series that we have updated. This is no longer the legacy version. This is the brand new updated version for 2025 and going into 2026. And of course, this is a part of the TryHackMe pathway for SOC Level 1. All right, this is a part, again, as I mentioned, of the introduction to core SOC solutions, which is a part of the SOC Level 1 series of TryHackMe. And this video today is going to be mostly a lecture type of video. So we're going to go through what an EDR actually is. We're going to go beyond what it serves as an antivirus solution purpose. Endpoint detection response is definitely a much more evolved version of something called antivirus. How it actually works, the telemetry, which is a very important concept behind endpoint detection response, detection and response capabilities, investigating an actual alert. So there's a practical exercise that we're going to get a chance to do inside of the SOC simulator. And of course, the conclusion and the timestamps of all of these things are going to be in the description below. So if you want to jump around or if you want to get to a certain section or review a certain section, all of that stuff is available to you. And again, this is a part of the TryHackMe platform. And this is one of the many reasons why we love TryHackMe. And because of the holiday season, usually they put some discounts available for their paid membership. So I think if you have not done so already, you should definitely check it out and see if there's any way that you can save some extra money by signing up for this platform around this time of the year. That being said, we're going to get a quick little note from Hackaholics Anonymous, our membership community, and from there we'll jump into the introduction. If you want access to my notes and exclusive downloads and to get lifetime access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers. We have the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below and you will be able to choose the tier for which you want to join. I really hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. Okay, endpoint detection and response is a security solution designed to monitor, detect, and respond to advanced threats. So the name implies endpoint. So endpoint represents a laptop, a cell phone, a server. It could be even IoT devices, essentially. Anything that is inside of the network that has an IP address, that could be an endpoint. Detection is we are detecting any kind of malicious traffic or anomalous traffic, basically traffic that's outside of the baseline of our normal traffic, our normal activities inside of the network, and then we're responding to it accordingly. And the response is typically done by the security analyst, and there are a lot of times that you can even manage or automate a lot of the responses that you can put together for these types of things, but typically it's done by a human being. And so endpoint detection and response is done through a variety of different software solutions and things like that exist. And we will review all of those in future sections as well as future episodes. So as a SOC analyst, it's essential for you to understand how these things work because they are widely adopted solutions in organizations to protect their endpoints. And we're going to go over how it differs from a traditional antivirus and what data it collects from the endpoints themselves. And we'll discuss the detection and response capabilities it provides and really where that data goes, right? So it collects data and it also can send that data to something like a SIM tool that we'll talk about in the very next episode. So endpoint detection and response, as you can see, it takes all of these various endpoints, right? Cell phone, laptop, monitor, or desktop, all that stuff, and it sends it to the endpoint detection response tool. So the objectives for today's video are to understand the basics of EDR and how it works, differentiate it from traditional antivirus solutions, examine the architecture of an EDR solution, analyze the types of telemetry that it collects from endpoints, understand the detection and response capabilities, and of course, investigate a realistic alert in the EDR, which is going to be towards the very end, so that we can apply all of this theory in real practical exercises. The prerequisites for this are basic knowledge of different endpoints and the common attacks on them, awareness of roles of the SOC team. So we've already done this at the beginning of this playlist. We went through the various positions inside of a security operations center and just understanding the various endpoints. So what a Windows computer is like, what a Linux computer is like, what a Mac computer is like. Mac and Linux run on Unix. So the common denominator between the two of them is the Unix operating system that was developed quite a while ago. And so they have similarities in their command line, but the interfaces are quite different. And obviously Mac stands out from Linux and Windows as well. And Linux is technically open source. So it's one of those things that because of their open source nature, they are a lot of times looked down upon by people who are, as we call them, casuals in the system administration business and in the IT world. But Linux is a very, very powerful operating system, and it's smiled upon by a lot of different organizations, and it's used for a lot of different purposes other than just somebody sitting in front of a computer. So it's a really powerful operating system, and it's something that I have grown very fond of over the last couple of years. And anybody who's also in security administration and hacking and things like that, they will also tell you that they're very much fond of Linux. So we love Linux, but just understanding the various operating systems that exist, the various endpoints that exist, and how they usually differentiate from each other. So for example, when we're looking at an IoT device, an Internet of Things device, it's typically ran on Linux because the Linux command line can very easily be ran for a number of different IoT devices, and it's very lightweight compared to Windows or Mac. Obviously, you can't install Mac on a thermostat or something like that. So this is a lot of where Linux really, really shines, and it's installed on a lot of different devices that you normally wouldn't think that it's installed on. If you want to get a really much better picture of what Linux is like, I would recommend going to the CompTIA Linux Plus training series that's on this channel and checking that out. Okay, so that is all good for our introduction. Let's talk about what an EDR actually is. Okay, as we already discussed, there's a lot of different devices that can count as endpoints. Essentially, if they live in the digital realm and if they have an IP address assigned to them, they are considered to be an endpoint. Now, with the emergence of something called remote work, right, the variety of endpoints that are included inside of a organization's network expands very, very widely because people can actually use their own computers, right? As long as they're connected to a specifically designated router, or let's say they have a VPN that's been pre-approved by the organization, they can use their own computers, which means they're using their own endpoints, and that endpoint needs to be secured and it needs to be monitored inside of that organization's network, even though sometimes it's used for personal purposes for that specific employee. But I mean, a lot of times they actually assign specific laptops or computers to people because it's just a lot easier to separate their personal life from their work life if they have a designated work computer. So to ensure that these endpoints are protected even out of their network, we need a security solution that guards all those devices in these areas, and it's also capable of fighting advanced threats. And that's where EDR comes in. That is the solution that offers deep level protection for these endpoints. No matter where they are physically, the EDR will make sure that they're monitored constantly and threats are detected. This is how companies can actually hire somebody that's in a different state or even a different country and still be able to rest assured that they're going to be secure. So some of the common EDR solutions are CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, Microsoft Defender for Endpoints, OpenEDR, Symantec EDR, and this is just a handful of them. There are so many other ones. And their underlying architecture is mostly similar, but the features can vary. So we're going to look at the core features of an EDR, and this is what we expect to exist in all of the EDRs. If they have these, I mean, it's considered a core feature, so they should hopefully have these. And we're going to be using screenshots from CrowdStrike Falcon EDR to demonstrate the core features. So this is everything that you're going to see has to do with CrowdStrike Falcon. But again, we're looking at core features that should exist with all of them. Now, there are three main features of an EDR that can also be referred to as the three pillars of the EDR. You have visibility, detection, and then response. So let's talk about that. Again, they're taken from CrowdStrike. So visibility. A good analysis often depends on the available level of visibility of the activity. This is one of the features that makes it unique from other endpoint security, and a level of visibility that an EDR provides is extensive and impressive. It collects detailed data from endpoints, which include process modifications, registry modifications, file and folder modifications, user actions, and so much more. And then it presents this information in a structured format to the analyst. And then the analyst can see the whole process tree in a complete activity timeline of the sequence of actions. This part is super freaking handy right here. The sequence of actions and the timeline associated with them. And then they can also access the historical data of any endpoint for threat hunting or any other purpose. And the detections in the EDR land with a whole context. So process mods, registry mods, file and folder mods, user actions, and more. So this screenshot shows the graphical representation of a process tree, and we can see where it spawned on the endpoint. Each node represents a process, and the lines connecting them represents their relationship. If we click on the plus icon, given in each process, we'll be able to see all the network connections, registry changes, file changes associated with that process. So if we kind of try to zoom in on this a little bit here, you can see that. So you have the Tor executable. I think that would be the Tor Onion browser maybe. So the Tor executable, and it connects to this RAR executable. And then if you click on plus, right, it would expand these individual items and you'll see how it goes. And then so you have the Tor executable, and then soy net executable, and then this one goes to this, and then this one goes to this. So you can see how these things actually break down. That's called the process tree. There are also many other features available in it which maximize the visibility. Then we have detection. So the detection of EDR wins over traditional detection capabilities. It incorporates signature-based detections as well as behavior-based detection, such as unexpected user activities. With modern machine learning capabilities, it identifies any deviation from the baseline behavior and instantly flags it. It can also detect fileless malware that resides in memory. It also allows us to feed custom IOCs for threat detection. The following screenshot shows us a dashboard of the detection happening, and each is represented by a row in different fields, including severity, time, triggering file, hostname, username, and the tactic via technique field maps the detection with MITRE. And of course, we have referenced MITRE by so many different videos, and it's like the main threat intelligence resource, because it actually holds all of the threat intelligence for campaigns that have previously been launched successfully, the groups that launched them, the tactics and techniques that they used, the software that they used, and the damages that were caused, any kind of remediation and external resources, all of that stuff. So very, very, very powerful source. The MITRE attack framework is what you're looking for. And so obviously most, if not all, security tools will have some kind of a reference to a MITRE ID to reference the actual tactic and technique that was used. So this will show us rich details, which helps us during our analysis. So this is what we have over here now. We have the time right here, the process on the host, the tactic, and then the command line execution that was actually done, right? And so each one of these things will actually go ahead and expand into more information as well. So the tactic via technique, this is the reference to MITRE, and then the process on the host, so PowerShell on this specific host by the admin user, setup exe on that host by J Adams, etc., etc. So again, very good detailed information as to what happened. And then finally, we have response. And so EDR empowers us to take action on detected threats, and they can be taken at any endpoint within the central EDR console. And imagine getting that EDR detection with full-fledged details on when, where, and what happened. And you have to opt for the best possible action for that detection. And as an analyst, you may decide to isolate a complete endpoint, terminate a process, quarantine some files, and you can connect to the host remotely even and execute those actions independently. And all of this can be done within the EDR console. So again, this is a very, very powerful tool. So this is what we can see on a given host right here. So that's the host. They're on Linux. They're still connected. And these were the commands that ran, right? So cat, cd, clear, cp, encrypt, env, or I guess, I don't know if they were the commands that ran, or it could be the commands that can be ran inside of the Linux platform. And then so this specific one may have been the command that was actually executed on this given computer. So the actions available that can be taken on the host after connecting to it. Yeah, so exactly. So this is the stuff that you can do on Linux. So these are specific. I was wondering, I'm like, what a cat cd, like what did they do exactly? But these are actually the list of commands that you can run on Linux. And same thing, you can run this on Mac OS as well. So cat and cd and clear, all of these things actually work on Mac OS computers as well, because it runs on Unix and Linux runs on Unix. So there are other actions that the analyst can take during the investigation, and in task 6, we're going to be covering the detection and response capabilities of the EDR. And with advanced visibility detection and response, EDR becomes a powerful tool, and it's also important to remember that it's a host-only security solution, and it does not detect network-level threats because it's connected to the endpoint, right? So just keep that in mind. It's connected to the endpoint, and so you may have 50 endpoints inside of your network, and you would have to take all of the data that is being pulled from those endpoints and feed that into a tool that can actually detect network level threats. For example, a SIM tool, which is something much more advanced than an EDR. The EDR they serve different purposes, in my opinion. The EDR is very, very powerful for dealing with a specific host. But when you're trying to figure out what's going on inside of a network and the overall activity that is taking place, it's very, very powerful to combine the EDR with the SIM tool. So which feature of the EDR provides a complete context for all of the detections? So which feature of it? Advanced visibility, detection, and response. So we're looking at detections. I'm going to say it's detection. So let's see if it's detections. And that's not it. Okay, great. So a complete context, maybe it's visibility, I would say. That would probably be it. Okay, great. Which process spawned the sc.exe? So let's zoom out here. And the hint says, find this information from the screenshot. So which process spawned sc.exe? So if we go over here and look at these processes that spawn them, so it's probably up here. sc.exe, it's tor.exe technically, but it could be cmd.exe as well. So let's do, it's either tor or cmd. Let's try cmd.exe. Okay, awesome. So let us go into beyond the antivirus. Okay, so it brings up a big question here. Why do we need the EDR when we already have an antivirus on endpoints? And just based on what we've seen in those screenshots and the things that we can do, I feel like you can already come to the conclusion or come up with the answer to this question already. So both of those security solutions have same motive, right? Protecting the endpoint on which they're installed. However, they differ in the level of protection that they provide. So with an antivirus solution, for example, I don't know of any antivirus solution that will allow the security analyst to remote in to the endpoint, to actually remote into that machine, take over the machine and start doing things. I don't know of any. I'm sure they exist, and we can probably even Google it and just kind of as like a side mission, as a side quest. I would encourage you to Google to see if there are any antivirus solutions that will allow you to remote in. And if they're antivirus, right, they can't be mixed into something else. So it can't be like, yeah, there's this software that is an antivirus, but it also has EDR capabilities. It's like, no, is it strictly antivirus, and does it allow you to remote in? And I can't think of one. The functionality of the antivirus doesn't imply that it can do something like that. So if it does exist, then it's a multiple solutions in one kind of a thing. It's not just antivirus. So one layer of protection is to check the passports of people when they pass through immigration. This is just an example here, right? So we're talking about an airport. So one layer is to check the passports of people when they go through immigration. The immigration check, which would be AV, antivirus in this solution, it monitors incoming people and matches their passports with a list of known criminals in the database. If there is a match, the entry is blocked and caught, right? So the antivirus solution will look at an IP address against its database. If the IP address is on the list of known malicious IP addresses, it's blocked, right? So that would be one layer. But what happens if somebody who has never been identified as a criminal in the past and has an innocent personality tries to come in, right? So they don't have, the IP address doesn't have a malicious signature, right? The hacker bought a brand new IP address through a digital cloud service provider, which is like super easy to do. It costs like $5 or something like that. So the immigration check will let them in. Now, what if this innocent person were a professional thief trained to evade basic security? Airport has an undetected threat inside, and this is where the EDR in this case would come in. The EDR would be the security officers in the airport, right? These officers would constantly monitor security cameras and motion sensors, which would end up being the endpoints themselves, right? Compared to the AV immigration check right there, the security officers, the EDR, will enhance the protection of the airport, which is the endpoint, through CCTV monitoring, motion sensors. Even if somebody manages to evade immigration, the security officers will constantly be monitoring their actions, like, are they roaming close to restricted areas? Is their behavior suspicious? Are they leaving their bags somewhere unattended? The security officer can also take action if something does not feel right to them, or alert airport management with complete details of what happened. Antivirus may detect basic threats, but to detect advanced threats that evade normal detection, we need the EDR. Unlike antivirus basic signature-based detection, the monitoring and recording of the EDR are the important elements of it. It records the behaviors of the endpoint itself. It's very, very important. Antivirus checks for signatures, right? Does this match my record? It does. You're being blocked. Oh, it doesn't match my records. It must be fine. I'm going to let you through. That's basically the rule set of the antivirus, right? Very similar to firewalls as well. It's like, does this match the rules that I have? Okay, it does. All right, I'm not letting you in, or I am letting you in, right? So there are the ability of a solution to look at behavioral traffic and to look at behavioral patterns and look at anomalies versus baselines. All of those things are very advanced layers of protection. The EDR does this, right? It also provides organization-wide visibility of any activity. For example, if a suspicious file is detected on one endpoint, the EDR will also check if it's on all of the other endpoints as well. So we're going to look at an example of this step by step and compare the response of the AV and the EDR at each stage, right? So scenario. Step 1, user receives a phishing email with a Word document embedded with a malicious macro, a VBA script inside of the macro details of the file, right? So they open the file and the macro launches and the script is inside of it, okay? Step 2, the user downloads the document and opens it. So that's basically where everything hits the fan. Step 3, the malicious macro is silently executed and it spawns PowerShell. Step 4, the malicious macro runs an obfuscated PowerShell command to download a sophisticated second stage payload, right? So the malicious macro doesn't really do much itself other than just referring to another website that will download a second stage payload without anybody noticing, right? So that PowerShell command that's being spawned and it's being launched, all it's doing is just downloading something which is going to really do the damage, right? The second stage payload. And then step 5, the payload is injected into a legitimate SVC host, which is just a bunch of services that are actually legitimate services that can be potentially used for malicious intent. And in step 6, the attacker gains remote access to the system. Okay, so this is what happened. These are the steps that happened. Somebody opened a phishing email, they downloaded the file, they launched the file. The macros of the file launched and downloaded something else as a second stage malicious payload. That payload was injected into a legitimate service and then it ran. And when it ran, it gave the attacker remote access to that system. Okay, so now, according to the antivirus, they look at WinWord and it's like, oh, it's clean, it's fine. WinWord, macro execution, PowerShell, oh, it's clean, it's fine. Second stage payload downloaded, remote access. All of these things, right, to the antivirus, oh, it's fine. WinWord is fine. I recognize WinWord. I recognize PowerShell. Those things are fine, no problem. The endpoint detection response considers all of these things in connection to each other, and it notices the macro execution, it notices the download of the second stage payload, the remote access that just took place. All of those things come together, and it gets a full picture. And then this full picture will give the EDR an alert that says something is wrong. So the antivirus versus the EDR response, right? Step one, nothing, because the file has no previous signature in the database. But the EDR logs the file downloaded as an activity and monitors that downloaded file. Step two, AV does nothing because the document opened. Since WinWord is a legitimate utility, there's nothing wrong. EDR records the execution of WinWord and keeps monitoring, right? Step three, AV does nothing because the executed macro has no previous signature, right? There's no malicious database entry for it. EDR detects and flags the macro execution due to the unusual parent-child relationship of WinWord and PowerShell. So it's like, why is WinWord the parent of PowerShell being launched? That's not normal. That's not how it usually happens, right? From WinWord, we don't get PowerShell being launched. That's very odd. Step four, typically AVs will not detect obfuscated PowerShell scripts, so that's not even a part of its capability. Obfuscated means disguised, basically. PowerShell scripts can actually be disguised with base 64 encoding or something like that, and so you don't notice what's happening. You just see kind of just gibberish on the screen. The EDR flags the obfuscated script execution. AV will not flag malicious injection into SVC host since it does not monitor the memory injections. It's not even a part of its capability. But EDR detects process injection as an SVC host. AV lacks network level visibility. EDR flags the unexpected behavior of SVC host, making an outbound connection because it's noticing what's happening on the network level. And finally, on the AV, on the antivirus, all of that could be marked as clean. But on the EDR, it generates an alert with a full attack chain and it enables the analyst to take actions from within the EDR. You see? So the EDR connects all of the steps together to build the full chain of what happened. And it can actually detect the network connections that are taking place to establish what's going on outside of the local host. So there's a note that says some modern AVs may be more enhanced visibility and detection. However, the EDR is ahead as it levels up detection and response in an endpoint. So no matter what, honestly, they don't come close. They have the same goal, which is to prevent a hack from taking place. But their functionality is very, very different. Do you want one over the other? No, you want both. But if you had to choose, it would be the EDR all day. That's just basically it. So, in the given analogy, what presents an antivirus? What presents an antivirus? What does that mean? I see. In the given analogy, what presents the antivirus? And it was the, what is it? The security? No. Immigration check. The immigration check presents the antivirus. That's such a interesting way to look at it. Okay, so immigration check is the antivirus in this case. Which legitimate process was hijacked by the attacker in the scenario? And the legitimate process in this case was SVC host, I want to say, but we can also go look at the legitimate process of, WinWord, I think it was what it was. So WinWord exe might be the legitimate process in this case. So winword.exe, okay, svc host.exe. Okay, very good. Now, which security solution might mark this activity as clean? And that would be the antivirus. Okay, so moving on to how the EDR actually works, we need to answer a few key questions. How does it manage to provide the visibility of the endpoint? How can it detect advanced threats? And how can a few clicks eradicate the threat from an endpoint? And again, kind of a logical common sense kind of a thing. But let's go and review these details. So It seems like magic, but it's just wonderful science. It's the advanced level of science. It's amazing. Okay, so on each endpoint, and of course this is going to be explained down here as well, but the picture is worth 1,000 words, right? On each endpoint, there is something called an agent that is installed. And then that agent is connected to the main server that collects all of the data, also known as the console. And so it forwards data from each of the endpoints to the console, and the console monitors everything together. Now, again, just keep this in mind, the console will not be able to detect what goes on as a whole inside of this network. It does not have that ability. It will detect whether or not that file that was here is also on this machine and on this machine and on this machine, but it can't detect the communication that these machines have with each other, okay? It's very, very important to understand that element of it. Even though they're feeding data individually to this thing and they're part of the same work, it does not mean that the EDR console can detect all of the interworkings of this network. It will compare what's going on this. If it's malicious, if it notices something malicious, it'll compare this to this and to this and to this, but it's not comparing how these communicate with each other or how they communicate with the outside world, the World Wide Web, okay? So going to the agent, we can integrate multiple endpoints with the EDR and manage them through a centralized console. The EDRs are agents that we have to deploy inside these endpoints, and they are also sometimes referred to as sensors. They are the eyes and ears of the EDR, and the job is to sit at the endpoint and monitor all the activities. The information about these activities is sent in detail to the EDR central console in real time. And the EDR agents can do some basic signature-based and behavior-based detection by themselves and send them to the EDR console, which triggers alerts. The EDR console is all the detailed data receiving from those agents. It's all correlated and analyzed through the complex logic and machine learning algorithms, and the threat intelligence information is matched within the collected data. The EDR is just like the brain connecting all the dots, and these dots connect to form a detection, often called an alert. The following screenshot shows us the dashboard of the EDR console and all the data from the endpoint agents coming into the console, and the detections are happening, and it gives us a holistic view of the current status of the detection. So we have 175 detections here. The SHA-based detections, meaning it's looking at the hash values, the SHA hash values of something. So it has 175 also in this as well. In the last 7 days, there are 12. The crowd score over time, we have the severity levels of the most recent detections themselves. So command and control via remote, that's all very high severity. Malware via PUP, it seems to be low severity. And then we have detections by the various tactics. So malware, defense evasion, machine learning, command and control, and impact. So you can see there's a lot of malware that's going on here. And then there's defense evasion on the very first one right there. And then there were a few quiet days, or I would say several quiet days. We also have command and control happening towards the end right here, and a couple of machine learning blocks right there. And impact is like right there, and then one right there. So impact is the lowest one, but I would say the majority of them are malware. It's like on every single day that there was a detection, with the exception of these 2 days, on every other day there was malware that was involved. So what happens after detection? When a detection comes, the SOC analyst's responsibility is to acknowledge the alert and prioritize it. Prioritization is made by the EDR. It makes it very easy because it gives us the critical, high, medium, low informational, which is what you see right here. So it helps us do that. And the alert with the high severity is investigated as a priority for the investigation. Once it is clicked, the analyst can see all the details of it. And it includes files executed, process executed, network connection attempts, registry modifications, and much more. Network connection attempts is just that. It's just logging the network connection attempt. It's not telling you what else happened with that network connection, okay? So based on the available data, the analyst's job is first to use their expertise, to determine if the alert is a false positive or a true positive. In case of a true positive, the analyst can take actions from within the EDR console, for example, block something or escalate something. So EDR with another tool embedded. So this is where it all really starts to shine and it really all starts to come together. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about the EDR solution or the SOC solution known as the SIEM. And then we're going to start talking about Splunk and Elastic Stack and things like that. So this is all very, very useful and very important when considering the bigger picture. So it's essential to understand that although the standalone EDR provides enough information to detect and respond to threats in an endpoint, it works alongside other security solutions to form a larger security ecosystem. Within a network, you'll see firewalls, DLPs, email security gateways, blah, 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 and everything else protecting the different components of the network. To minimize the effort and maximize the efficiency, all these security solutions are integrated with a SIEM solution that becomes the central point of investigation for the analyst. So as I mentioned at the very top of this video, there's an integration that happens between the EDR and the SIEM. And we will discuss how that actually looks in future videos. But essentially, the EDR gets all of the log data from each individual endpoint and forwards it to the SIEM. That's one way of doing it. Or you just get the EDR log, right? The EDR log basically getting all of the endpoints, digesting all of that information, creating one main giant log for the EDR, and that gets forwarded to the SIEM. And then the SIEM takes that EDR log, combines it with the network log and the security log and the everything else, the firewall log, whatever else we got, and then it combines all of those together to see if it notices any patterns, or at the very least for us to be able to investigate what we think might be a pattern. So, which component of the EDR is responsible for collecting telemetry from endpoints? So basically what is installed on the endpoint, and that would be the agent. An EDR agent is also known as a, what is it? It was a something with an S. So it's sensor. Yes, very good. Okay. So now we've talked about this word several times. What is telemetry? In a quick sentence, telemetry is the black box of the endpoint with everything necessary for detection and investigation. So it's basically from the endpoint. So this is the data coming from the endpoint with everything that is necessary for the EDR tool to process and do its detection and investigation. So collected telemetry. Many activities are going in on the endpoints or going on in the endpoints, I should say. Most of them are legitimate, but often difficult to differentiate between regular and malicious activity. And the more data that is collected, the better the judgments that can be made. So EDR collects detailed telemetry from the endpoints, and we'll look at some of those things right now. So again, EDR agents, right, forward their data to the console, and it could be commands executed, etc. So, okay, process executions and terminations, right? So a process that executes or launches, and then if it terminates, right? Everything that's running and idle, which helps us identify suspicious child-parent process relationships, suspicious executable, initiating a process, malware payloads, etc. Network connections. So all the endpoints network connections are monitored, which helps identify any connection to a C2 server, unusual port usage, data exfiltration, or lateral movement within the network. Command line activity. All the commands executed on the endpoint in CMD, PowerShell, Terminal, Bash, whatever, right? Helps to identify malicious command execution, obfuscated PowerShell script executions, which are often missed by a traditional antivirus, as we already discussed. Files and folder modifications, so modifying different files and folders during data staging, ransomware executions, and malicious file dropping. The EDR tracks all of this. Registry modifications, so this is where a lot of things reside on a Windows computer specifically. The registry, I haven't really heard of a registry existing in Linux or Unix environments, but inside of Windows, there's definitely something called the registry, and it's a very, very big goldmine, really. It's probably like the best reference of it. There's a lot of information about the configurations in a Windows system, and there are many registry modifications that occur during a malicious activity, and most of them are monitored by the EDR. So the EDR collects much more than this. It uses complex logic and machine learning algorithms to assess these activities. Advanced threat keeps most of their activities stealthy using legitimate utilities during execution. We call this LOL binary, so living off the land. These are legitimate binaries that exist inside of a given world, inside of a given computer that the computer uses for legitimate activities, but those binaries can be used for malicious activity. So the binary itself, the utility itself is legit, but it can be used for malicious activities. And so these activities can be harmless individually, but when observed through detailed telemetry, the connections, right, they tell a different story. The detailed telemetry not only helps us detect advanced threats and make better judgments, but it also is very helpful for the analyst during the investigation itself. So the analyst can understand the full chain of events because telemetry connects everything together. So which telemetry data helps in detecting C2 communications? So this is what? It's the network, right? So C2 communications is a network connection type of telemetry. So that would be it here. Oh, my keyboard fell asleep. So let's do, there we go. Network detections, or what is it? Network, what is it? Network connections. My goodness. Network connections. Okay, there we go. And where are the configuration settings of a Windows system primarily stored? Configuration settings of Windows is inside a registry. Moving on to detection and response capabilities. So detection based on the telemetry received from the endpoint, advanced detection are applied to this data. So that could be behavioral detection instead of just matching signatures, as we discussed already, observing the complete behavior of a file. Advanced threats craft their malware to look clean and use legitimate processes to carry out their attacks, also known as living on the land binaries or living off the land binaries. So EDR catches this behavior. So for example, a process winword.exe spawning PowerShell will be flagged due to the behavior. A Word document spawning PowerShell is unusual. Anomaly detection. So with time, EDR understands the baseline. So baseline means normal behavior of the endpoint. Any activity that deviates from this behavior will be flagged. During any malicious activity, the endpoint's behavior deviates from normal. EDR picks it up. So sometimes this can generate false positives as well. However, with full context, it gives the analyst identifying its legitimacy. So the key here is the longer that the EDR has access to baseline behavior, the more accurate it becomes at detecting anomalous behavior, right? So anomaly is out of the norm. That's basically what that is. So when there is a lot of time, so a week of baseline behavior is very different from a year of baseline behavior. If you can imagine, the year of baseline behavior is a much more in-tuned detection source for the EDR, and it can compare anything that is outside of that year's worth of baseline, and then it would easily be able to detect an anomaly. So an example would be on one of the endpoints, a process modifies an auto start registry, which is not a common behavior on that specific endpoint. It should not have that registry behavior. Therefore, the fact that it's activated, then all of a sudden, or the fact that it's modified even, all of a sudden, now we have something else to go on. Indication of compromise matching. So indicator, I should say, of compromise. This is essentially an indication that some kind of a compromise has taken place, right? It's a sign that a compromise has taken place. So strong threat intelligence field integrations can be made into the EDR. So except for zero-day attacks, which are attacks that have not been detected before, they're brand new, so they don't have any kind of record in a threat database. Most of the attacks have indicators published in the threat intelligence feeds, and all of these things can be known as indicators of compromise, and the EDR can flag that activity to match any of those IOCs. So a user downloading a file that drops an executable, the executable is often used in a specific attack. The hash of this executable will be matched with the threat intelligence feed and instantly flagged by the EDR. That's kind of the whole process. The hash of that executable by itself, the executable being downloaded, that hash or that signature of that can exist inside of an antivirus, but in the series of activities that have taken place, it may not necessarily trigger anything inside of the antivirus, which is why we need the full scope, which is why threat intelligence feeds and the hash values of those payloads and those executables is so important. So MITRE ATT&CK is this source of threat intelligence, right? So MITRE ATT&CK mapping is something that a lot of these tools do. So any activity flagged by EDR is not only marked as malicious or suspicious, but it's also matched with the MITRE tactic and technique, meaning which stage of attack that is. So, I mean, I've done so many videos of this, but this is something that is worthy of just sharing with you one more time. This is the MITRE attack matrix. So these things are known as tactics, right? Reconnaissance, resource development. These things at the top that you see right here, these are the tactics, and then underneath them, these are the techniques for each one of those tactics. And then some of these, when you click on it, it expands, and then you see sub-techniques going on. So some techniques have sub-techniques underneath them as well. And so if we click on any of these, it'll open up their relevant page, and then you'll see the ID of this sub-technique, as well as the tactic that it belongs to, as well as the platform and procedural examples, mitigations, detection strategy. All of that stuff is applied to it. So MITRE ATT&CK framework is a massive threat intelligence resource for many tools and many people, and I reference it regularly, and of course tools themselves also reference it regularly, because that's how we get a good understanding of what can be done, right? So you can actually go and map out a unique tactic and technique and look at how a specific tactic or technique actually maps out, meaning where do they start on reconnaissance, and what's the next step that they took, and what's the next step that they took, and it all connects to each other, and it gets you to the final exfiltration, command and control, all of these things right here. So they actually connect to each other, and you can map them out, and that way you understand what somebody may be trying to do if they're doing a specific tactic underneath this, right? Or trying to get employee names or compromise infrastructure and doing botnets or something like that. The way that they connect to each other, you can actually see how it maps out, and it gives you a really good idea of what potentially can happen at an end result. And that gives you a much better idea of protecting, or what you need to do to protect the environment or the infrastructure that you're in. So the example would be, if the EDR flags the creation of a scheduled task for any reason, it will likely map this activity to the following: the persistence tactic or scheduled task job tactic, or technique, I should say. So persistence tactic, scheduled task job technique. Then we have machine learning algorithms. So advanced threat actors try to evade defenses as much as possible. Their activities may sometimes bypass advanced detection techniques. And so the modern EDR will have machine learning models trained by a large data set of normal and malicious behaviors. And this can detect complex patterns of an attack, or patterns that may not already exist, and it can estimate or guesstimate, kind of predict that something is going to take place, right? So attacks in which the individual actions are not inherently malicious, but the machine learning algorithm identifies the whole chain of activities as malicious. Fileless attacks and multi-stage intrusions are often detected through this type of detection mechanism. And then we have responses, right? So there's the isolating of the host. So if something is going on an endpoint, one of the first things should be to isolate that endpoint from the network through the EDR console. And it's very effective for containing it. So when you isolate something, that means that it can no longer connect to the network. It's disconnected from the internet. It can't communicate with any of the other devices in that location. So that way, whatever is going on inside of it, it stays inside of it. Think of it as putting kind of like a glass beaker on top of a bug that's on a desk. You don't want the bug to be roaming around. You know what I mean? That's kind of what isolation does. Most attacks start from a single endpoint, and they move laterally to other endpoints. And so isolating the infected endpoint can stop this from happening. So terminating the process happens after you isolate, right? So you isolate the endpoint, then you narrow down what the process is, And it doesn't necessarily sometimes happen with host isolation, although I would recommend that if you suspect that something is going on, you immediately isolate that host, because you don't know if it's just one process that is going on over there, and you might need to look at other processes that are taking place. So if you think that a host is somehow compromised, whatever the process is that is detected, you first isolate the host, you terminate that process, and then you look at for any other processes, parent processes, grandparent processes, sub processes, whatever it is. You would look at everything else that might be connected to that chain to make sure that nothing else is still running. So some hosts run core business operations, and isolating them can cause more loss than the malicious activity itself. Fine, fair enough, I guess. So in such those cases, terminating a process is enough to neutralize the malicious activity. The analyst gets this option in the EDR. They can terminate any process. Okay, I mean, whatever. Quarantine. So it's kind of another way of saying isolate, but in this case, we're quarantining the actual file itself. We're not quarantining the entire machine. We're not isolating the entire machine. So quarantine ensures that the file is moved to an isolated location where it cannot be executed and the analyst can review it. Then we have remote access, so you can just remotely access the shell of any endpoint, often done when the EDR built-in response is not good enough to take action on a specific activity. And through remote access, we can gain deeper visibility in the system or take custom actions within the endpoints that are not available through the EDR's built-in responses. We can also run scripts or collect desired data. And so this is what it looks like when we do CrowdStrike Falcon in real-time response, which also allows analysts to remotely access the shell of any endpoint. So we can see this right here. Again, we have Linux, and then right here we have the execution right here that we can go ahead and potentially run once we actually have that connection. Then we have artifact collection that's also inside of the response, and this is more so in the investigation after the isolation has been done, after termination has been done. This is kind of towards the end when you want to do an advanced investigation and incident response. It falls under digital forensics more than anything else. So this doesn't happen while you are trying to stop the thing from taking place, right? So the analyst may detect need to extract some data from endpoints for detailed forensic investigation, supporting legal action, and they can extract this from the endpoint without physically accessing the device. And the most commonly extracted would be memory dump, event logs, folder contents, and registry hives. So detection and response capabilities of the EDR is very different from traditional endpoint detection, and they introduce more advanced detection techniques over time. So which feature of the EDR helps you identify threats based on known malicious behavior? So EDR detection based on known malicious behavior, and we're looking at detection here. So IOC matching, right? Based on, I would say this right here, based on known malicious behavior, because we actually have the indicator of compromise that's attached to a threat intelligence feed. That would be probably my first and best guess. So we would do IOC matching. Okay, so here we go. We're going to run a practical exercise here. We have a site that we're going to end up using. Let me zoom out of this a little bit so we can see what's going on. And so this is our EDR dashboard. I am at, let's see, let's go to 100%. I think I'm super zoomed in. That's why. There we go. Okay, great. So, all right, so which tool was launched? What is the absolute path, etc., etc. So we're going to get some detailed information here. And this is for our EDR platform. I'm not going to read the scenario because honestly, it's irrelevant. The goal is to try to find what's going on here. Now, I can't expand this, unfortunately. Can I? There we go. I could do that. That's cool. All right, I didn't know I could do that. That's actually very, very handy. So that's our full dashboard right here of the EDR. So we have 4 detections, as we can see them right here, and the detection sources, etc., etc., active hosts going on. So this is very similar to what we saw previously. We have on the left-hand side right here a variety of different tabs. So I don't know if they're clickable. They don't seem to be clickable. I can kind of hover over them, but they're not clickable. Okay. So first question, it says, which tool was launched by CMDEXE to download the payload on desktop HR01? So if we look down here, there's only one desktop H101 right here. So this is the only one that we really need to look into. So if we expand this, macro-enabled Office document invoice doc was opened using WinWord exe. And so that's the thing right here, but it's not the answer. So it says which tool was launched by CMD exe. There we go. Okay, so that launched WinWord exe. The document triggered CMD, which launched curl. There we go. So what's the curl? It launched curl to download a payload from an external domain, and it was da 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 da. So if we go down here, can we see any other information about this? We cannot. So it would be curl.exe would be my best guess on this particular one right here. So let's try that out. Curl.exe. Okay, very good. Now, what is the absolute path to the downloaded malware on the desktop H101? So the absolute path that we're looking for, let's see if we can find that information here. Okay, at the very top, we have the process info. So there we go. We have, this is much better. So we can see this right here, WinWord exe, CMD, and then we have curl exe right there, and then install.exe. So it says to the downloaded malware. So we want the one that leads to install.exe, the absolute path of that. So what would be the absolute path of this thing? Can I click on it? There we go. I have, this is the absolute path for that downloaded file. So let's see if this works. Excellent. Okay, what's the absolute path to the suspicious sync SVC exe on the laptop 3? So let's go back to all detections here, and let's look at laptop 3 right there. And so the question is asking us for the absolute path to the suspicious sync SVC. So if we go to process info, we'll be able to do that. And so we have this right here, and the absolute path of the sync, that's what they're asking, right? So the suspicious sync. So this will be the absolute path right here. So let's see if this is the actual answer that we're looking for here. Excellent. Fantastic. On which URL was the exfiltration attempt being made on WinEng laptop? Okay, so we're going to move back now. We're going to look at the WinEng laptop. Oh, it's actually the same one. So we're still here. Okay. So it says on which URL was the exfiltration attempt being made? So let's see. It would be towards the end right here, I would say, or not. Let's see what we can find right here. Oh, here we go. We have that right here. That's amazing. This is so easy, dude. Attempted exfiltration to, there we go. And so this would be the full URL. That is unbelievably easy. Very, very easy. So easy. Okay, finally, what was update agent exe labeled by threat intel on the dev01 desktop? So let's go back to all detections, and we have the dev01 desktop. Okay, indicator of compromise, and we're looking for the update agent labeled by threat intel. So update agent labeled as app data directory. Is that what it is? No, maybe let me click on this. What do we get? App data directory. So that's the indicator. So maybe not it. Actions and response right here. Nothing like that. Process info. Update agent. Do we have threat intelligence? There we go. Okay. So known internal IT utility tool is the threat intel label. And it also has a behavior initiated outbound connection. We see this is really cool. This is super easy. That is probably one of the easiest labs I have ever done. I think all the data was just like right there on the screen. Super easy to do. And I mean, that was, I don't even know how else to explain it. Like, that was so easy. That was so easy to do. Threat intelligence, feeds, and endpoint detection and response. Unbelievably fun. Very easy to do. I can't even say enough about it, honestly. And that was it. I mean, this was that practical lab was kind of like the icing on the cake, so to speak. It was the cherry on top. I'm very surprised how simple that was, how straightforward that was. If you know what you're looking for, you get the information. That was super easy to do. Loved it, absolutely. and I cannot wait to do more stuff like this. The EDR tools are now my new favorite thing, because it was all categorized and everything was found for us. I really like that. That was awesome. Okay, so there we go. That's it. So now the next thing that we're going to end up doing is we're going to go into the introduction to the SIM, which is the introduction to the SIM tool itself. And then from there, we will get a basic introduction to Splunk one more time, because we've already done this, but now we're going to look at it with a new set of eyes, as well as the Elastic Stack. And then we have the introduction to security orchestration, automation, and response. So all of that stuff is going to be really fun to do as well, because I think it's all very handy and it's all very useful, and I think you will get a lot of value out of it. So that being said, we're going to finalize this room and wrap it up. If you got value out of this video, and if you'd like to get more videos like this one, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel. And of course, make sure that you drop a comment. Make sure you let me know if you have any questions about what we talked about, if you have any questions about future content, or if you have requests for future content, and anything of the sort. I think it's very important for me to hear from you. So if you just want to say hi, amazing. But if you have questions or if you have recommendations, I would love to hear from you. There's been a lot of content that's been developed on this channel because of the questions and recommendations from our community, and it's something that I am adamant about, and it's something that I really want to make sure I share with you and actually make sure that you get out of your membership of this community. Like, if you're a subscriber to this community, I want you to get access to the things that you really actually want and the things that really will help you specifically in your journey. So drop a comment, definitely make sure to do that. Make sure you check out everything else that we got on this channel. We have all the member exclusives, which are basically the Python tutorials that go along with the Python downloads that people get and the script downloads that they get. So there's Python downloads that they get, there's Bash scripting, and there's other types of scripting that's going to come out as well. All of those things, because they're reserved for the membership community, they fall under members only. And then members will get access to all of these videos, all the public videos that you're seeing for free, the 400 plus videos. How many videos are there now? We have 459 as the time of this recording, but there's probably going to be over 460 something by the time you actually watch this. So by all of these public videos, the 459, all those that you see are available to the public, but the members actually get access to them first, and then it's distributed to the public. So everything else is actually available to the public, and it will always be that way. It's just that there's specific things that are reserved for our members through the paid community, the Hackaholics Anonymous community. So all of that is just how it is, really. And I would really encourage you to actually check that out as well, because I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. We have the CompTIA playlist. There's 3 different playlists that are being built out. There's the SOC level 1, the brand new one that you're watching right now. There's AI for cybersecurity, which is what we see right here. And then we also have the PenTest Plus / offensive PenTesting that has PenTesting exercises inside of it. So there's multiple playlists being played out, built out, and then there's also multiple pieces of content that drop every single week. So there's a lot going on, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. So I'm going to stop talking. We're going to wrap this thing up. Quick little note from Hackaholics Anonymous. And make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to make sure that you get access to more videos as they come out on this channel. If you want access to my notes and exclusive downloads, and to get lifetime access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers. We have the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, and you will be able to choose the tier for which you want to join. I really hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers. If you're a network and system attacker / protector, if no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I will see you in the next video later.